to discuss it all, we're now joined by Katie Peralta. She's been covering this story for the Charlotte Observer, good enough to join us by phone. And again, Katie, we do appreciate the time. There's a lot to get to, but first I want to get to a clarification that has since been made by the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department with regard to the timeline regarding the shooting. Again, something that Chief Putney did say was but a matter of seconds. That Keith Scott did not leave the car initially holding a gun. It was only when he left the car a second time that officers saw a gun?
Yeah, so this was one of the questions that our reporters asked to clarify during the press conference. We asked specifically, so he came out of the car twice. Putney said yes, and he said both times he had a gun in his hand, and Putney said, no, sir. They saw the weapon in his hand the second time he exited. So that, that's why people are saying there was no gun the first time. The second time is when they saw it. Maybe they didn't see it the first time. It's still really unclear.
The chief did clarify the idea of an imminent threat. He also, though, said that in the video that he has thus far seen of the incident, he could not confirm in totality everything that happened. Has anything further than been described to you and your colleagues with regard to the moment where that imminent threat was felt?
There are some major details still missing, to be honest with you. It's unclear whether this gun was loaded, and more importantly, it's unclear whether he actually pointed it at police officers. So those are two major questions that need to be answered, and I guess that'll happen once the MPD has the chance to review both the dash cam and the cameras from the other officers that were there at the scene.
We should again mention Brentley Vinson, the officer in question who was said to have shot Keith Scott, was not wearing a body camera. He was in plain clothes. He's now been placed on administrative leave. However, the chief did refer to at least 3 other officers, in his words, who were there in full police uniform and may in fact have been wearing body cameras. Do we know then the source of the video that the chief has seen to this point?
No, that's something he did not say. He didn't say whether it was the body cams from the other officers or the dash cams, or whether it was maybe something else we're unaware of. Maybe there was a witness or something that had been filming. So that's still really unclear. All we know is that he has more work to do, and he made that very clear to us today as well. He
did make it clear to the chief that witnesses on scene have corroborated the version of events as he shared with them. However, I know you were watching, as were we and our viewers, the very different version of events shared by civil rights activists there on behalf, it would seem, of the family. What then to make of, first of all, the idea, again, that Keith Scott left the car not holding a gun but a book? Again, something that the police chief said was not recovered from the scene.
I don't know what to make of it, honestly. This is all really, it's really confusing. And obviously, if you remember the family and, believe that he was disabled, as they have said time and time again, he's carrying a book, he wasn't armed, that is a really different story from what police are saying, especially if it's, if it's posing as much of a threat as they say, one would assume that he was holding it in a way that was perceived as threatening to officers. So there are so many questions that still remain, and it's been hours yet after this thing. So, we're very much looking forward to getting more answers on that.
You mentioned, of course, the comments of John Barnett, who the self-described civil rights activist who seemed to be leading things there, referring to a question with regard to what may have happened. He said this. He said that Keith Scott may have been disabled, had a stuttering problem, and there may have been something going on with his brain. Again, it was a question regarding why Keith Scott perhaps did not respond to officers' commands to drop the weapon. They spoke to a need then to be transparent, and John Barnett said essentially, saying something still under investigation won't be enough here. They did speak then to protests set to gather again at 7 p.m. tonight there in the city. It is something that the police chief himself earlier today said that they do expect as well. What do you know about the organization and what we may see in roughly 8 hours from now?
Putney did say that they will be staffing up this evening, and I'm sure that will mean, that heavily increased force from what we saw last night. I think that they're hoping for peaceful protests this evening, but people are mad. People want answers, and I don't know if you can necessarily guarantee that everything will be peaceful this evening. So I'm very certain that there will be a lot of people out tonight. I'm very certain that there will be a lot of police officers out tonight. Beyond that, I think that, when they mention transparency, they're talking about communication. They're talking about, revealing as many details as they possibly can about the situation. But they've been very clear that they're not releasing the footage. But I think anyone can go on social media right now and see that there is a lot of footage around of, protests, of, people saying what they think they saw at the scene, that kind of thing. So, it remains to be seen. And I'm also not sure whether the CMPD will be releasing any of the footage to the family themselves, which technically they are allowed to do, but I'm not sure if they're going to do that.
Yeah, again, we did hear the police chief say that even though they are technically allowed to do it, it is his belief that it would compromise the integrity of the investigation. We should also mention there was a new law passed in the state that effectively bars public requests for that video, though it is a law that does not go technically into effect until October 1st. I do want to just ask you one other thing, Katie. We heard what looked to be an onlooker, an attendee of the civil rights group there, who at one point was espousing the belief that perhaps it was not, in fact, Officer Brent Lee Vincent who had done the shooting, that multiple witnesses attest to the fact that perhaps it was a white police officer who had killed Scott, and that they essentially switched the officers in question and put Brent Lee Vincent in the back of a car. Is there anything with regard to your reporting that suggests it was not Officer Brent Lee Vincent who pulled the trigger?
I have not heard that, other than besides just today at that press conference. That's certainly not something that Putney mentioned at all. It's not something that was talked about last night, as far as I know. I really don't know if I could answer that one.
Okay. Katie Peralta, again, excellent work here thus far on a very fast developing and fluid story, to be sure. Katie Peralta of the Charlotte Observer, we very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.